What's up guys, Nick Harrison here, back in the shop, and today I'm gonna make something that has to do with another one of my hobbies. So on this channel, you probably only see me doing woodworking. However, what you might not know is that I have two other kind of major hobbies. One of them is traveling, which is only as major as the finances will allow, and the other is aviation. If you don't know, I'm a private pilot here in the United States in North Carolina, and I like to fly. So I actually have another YouTube channel that I do my travel and aviation kind of stuff on. I'll leave a link to that down below. It's just Nick Harrison, or Meet Nick Harrison is my YouTube name. Again, I'll leave a link down below. If you'd like to check that out, feel free to do so and subscribe to that channel since I'm trying to get it off the ground. Anyways, since aviation is one of my hobbies, what I'm going to try to do today is take a piece of scrap wood and make a valet tray, catch-all tray, something like that, that's in the shape of a plane. We're just going to see what it looks like. So let's see what we can come up with. All right, so here's what I'm thinking. I have this scrap piece of lumber and it's hardwood. It's actually Peruvian walnut. I'm working on making a big table out of all this now, and this was a cutoff. Anyways, this I think is going to work for what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to make a small tray or just something. I don't even know if this thing's going to be cool, but I think it's cool to try it. So what I need to do first, though, as you can see, this has a check in the end of it. It runs down here and on this side. What I like to do when I have this is I don't want to cut, you know, obviously I want to get rid of this, but I don't want to cut it off right here, because if you look on the other side, it actually goes further up. So one side, the other side. So I'm actually going to take this to the chop saw and cut it off right here. That'll give me this much scrap to play with and try to make this tray. Okay, so the way that I'm going to try to make this tray is by using my CNC router. That was kind of the whole purpose of this, just because I haven't used my CNC in a while and I think they're fun to play with. So what I'm going to do, I have my tray here, and if I measure it, it's about 7 inches long and 8 1/4 inches wide. That's perfect. I'll use that for my artboard on the computer. But what I've seen before is to basically use a Forstner bit on the drill press and drill down each corner a little bit, and that kind of creates the mounting point on the CNC. So historically what I've done is drilled pilot holes in each corner and then screwed directly down to the bed of my CNC. That works okay, but a lot of times on hardwood like this, those screws just snap. So I'm going to try that method where I use that. I think Frank Howarth, or I know that Frank Howarth on YouTube does that a lot. He will drill down the sides to create mounting points for the hold down clamps on the CNC. So let's go to the drill press and try to see if we can create some mounts for this thing. Okay, so that did not work out too well. The Forstner bit just wanted to catch on the wood and ride down the edges of the wood. Not a big deal. I don't think it's ruined because when I carve this out, it's going to carve out a lot of these edges, but it just kind of chewed it up. The whole purpose of this is so that the clamp can hold the wood down to the table without the clamp being above the top surface of the wood so that the bit doesn't hit it. I think it's going to work, but maybe next time I need to come up with a better solution. Maybe I should have clamped this down to my drill press table or something like that. But anyways, let's get this mounted on the CNC machine. Okay, so now I'm at my computer. I have Affinity Designer open. That's just what I choose to use because it's kind of like Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator, Affinity Photo, Affinity Designer, but it's a lot cheaper. Anyways, I have my artboard set up here. It's 8 1/4 inches wide and 7 inches tall because that's the width dimensions of my board. So now I'm just going to, I have this airplane here. I'm going to paste it in here. Of course, it's not going to be the right size. Let's get it down where it will actually fit. And that's about 5.5 inches. Let's see what happens if we keep this to scale and make it 6 inches. So that'll be 6 by 6 inches, relatively small, but this is really just proof of concept just to see. So we're gonna use that. And as you can see down here, let's just make it an even 6 inches. So there's 6 by 6 inch plane. We're gonna export that as an SVG file, and we'll just name it as plane tray. And then we're going to open Carbide Create. And in settings, we're going to create our artboard. Again, it's going to be 8.25 inches wide, 7 inches tall, and we need to measure the thickness of our board. So using the calipers, it's about 0.88 inches thick. This is going to be a hardwood. I usually leave all these settings the way they are. Now we're going to import our plane tray file. That's plane. We need plane tray. Plane tray. And it's way too big, but of course we know that we made a 6 inch by 6 inch plane. We're going to apply that and bring it down to size. Bring it over, and you can actually hit that to center everything up. So what we want to do now, I'm going to be using a 1/4 inch downcut bit for this. We're going to create a tool path. Actually, we're going to leave it here. We're going to create a bowline. We want the distance to be 0.5 to the outside, and watch what happens when I click apply. That creates this little boundary around it. 0.5 might be too much. Let's do 0.25, a 1/4 inch. Outside, done. So that creates these two. So what we're going to do is the inside of everything inside of the orange is going to be carved out. So we're going to create a tool path and create a pocket. Select our tool. Again, we're using a 1/4 inch bit. We have an end mill there, and we'll keep these settings pretty much the same. And we want our max depth to go down to whatever you would like. So since this is 0.88 inches thick, I want about a 1/4 inch thick bottom on it. So we're going to make it to like 0.64. That would give us 0.24 on the bottom. So 0.44, and then we want to unselect that, select our outside. This is going to be a contour. This is what's actually going to cut out the shape, and we want that to be the full depth, of course. This isn't going to do that because this registers the bit as only 3/4 inch thick. So I'm going to do it to just 0.74, and we'll finish it after we get done on the CNC. We want it to cut on the outside of our line. We don't need tabs, and there we go. So 23 minutes total to cut this whole thing out, and we will save our G-code as the plane tray. Now that we have everything mounted and the CNC's turned on, we will connect to the cutter, and then we will initialize the machine. It will go through its sequence. And now we will jog the machine, and what I'm going to do here is rapid position it to the center of the back here, and then I actually have a keypad that I will use to get everything else positioned from there. And now that it's set, we will set our Y0 is already set. We'll set our Z and our X. Done. The only thing left to do is to click on Run, load a new file, bring our plane tray in here, start the job. When we start, the router will raise up. We'll turn the router on. The tool is inserted, so we'll turn the router on and let this thing go. Okay, so the CNC finished cutting this. It did not cut all the way through. It didn't cut the plane shape out, which I knew that because again, the bit wasn't long enough to go through. So I'm gonna use the bandsaw and rough cut and finish this shape. It's not gonna be perfect. I will finish the perfect cut with the router table here in a second, but we're gonna use the bandsaw to roughly cut this shape out. Okay, so I got it roughly cut out on the bandsaw, and as you can see, it's still kind of rough. It's kind of jagged, and that's fine. I purposely left it that way. I'm going to use a flush trim router bit that will use a bearing to reference on the good portion that was cut on the CNC, and then cut the remaining tab, janky, kind of rough stuff below that. I currently have a router bit installed that is a flush trim router bit. However, it's rather big and it's a 1/2 inch diameter. It's just a 2-flute straight blade router bit. What I'm going to use instead is a spiral router bit, and it's only a 1/4 inch diameter with a 1/4 inch shank, and I think it'll give it a little bit cleaner cut. But the main reason I'm using this is because it allows for tighter areas, tighter turns inside of here. So I'm going to get this bit swapped out with the big one in my router table, and we'll get started flush trimming this thing. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is, you see how there's like fuzzy pieces of wood on the edges? There's nothing wrong with that. It's just from the bit on the CNC router, it pulls those wood fibers up. So I'm going to use a small sander and clean all those fuzzy pieces up. Okay, so now that everything's sanded, everything's cleaned up, it's good to go. I'm going to use this Howard Feed and Wax, which is a beeswax oil blend, to finish this, and I'm just going to apply it with a paper towel. The good thing about this, in my experience, is that you can apply it pretty liberally, pretty heavily, and then just let it dry and buff out the excess. So let's get some finish on this thing. Okay, I've waited about 6 hours and the finish is now dry. It really darkened up the wood, which I knew would happen, but it's more of a really dark brown rather than the lighter brown that it was before, as to be expected with most wood finishes. Anyways, this is relatively small. As I mentioned, it's only about 6 inches. For comparison, that's my hand. And so even though I kind of made it to be a tray, you're not going to be able to hold a whole lot of stuff in here. Maybe something that's really small, like a bunch of push pins or thumbtacks or loose change, maybe, or even some small candy, I guess. I don't know, but it was really just for fun to make something cool that related to my other hobby of aviation and flying. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on future videos. And again, if you're interested in aviation or traveling, I have another YouTube channel that I do just that on, where I fly and travel, and I'll leave a link to that down below. Hope you enjoyed that video. Thanks for watching. Take care.